Hi, this is Kathy Ganatic. I continue my series on the 36 decans of the Zodiac today with Libra 3, the last part of Libra. This part of the Zodiac has a lot to do with finding our balance in the midst of opposing forces. We see this represented by the planets that rule this decan, Jupiter and Mercury, which are very different energies. And then Libra, of course, rules the sign and tries to bring harmony and balance. We also see this represented by the Four of Swords card in Tarot, which speaks to this idea of finding some respite in the midst of chaos, and the Kabbalah Sephira associated with this, Hesed. And lastly, we really see it represented by the chart I'm going to talk about today. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a famous basketball player known for his capacity to find that balancing, centering force on the court that enabled him to be such an amazing player, but then also finding balance within his own life, pursuing both basketball, but intellectual pursuits and spiritual pursuits as well. There's a lot to talk about. I hope you enjoy the video. If you do, like and subscribe. It would really help me out. I'm trying to grow my channel right now. So I'm going to bring up the whiteboard to talk about all of this. Here we go. So first, let's just talk about the sign of Libra. It's an air sign, and air signs are always about communication and thought, ideas, sharing knowledge. It's the second of the air signs. Gemini's the first one. The first of any sign in an element tends to be about the individual. The second tends to be social, you and I. And the third tends to be more communal or about the world at large. And so Libra is this air sign. Most folks understand it's the sign that's opposite Aries. If Aries is the sign of me and I need to exist and show I exist and be myself in the world, Libra is a sign of we. It's got a relational quality to it. Venus, the goddess of love, relationship, harmony, beauty, balance, rules the sign. Venus is also a sign, a planet that has to do with justice. She's the goddess of war when she's in the morning star phase. So always remember that. And then lastly, Libra is a cardinal sign. Cardinal signs happen at the equinox, these turning points of the seasons. They tend to like to initiate action, set things in motion. And Libra is also a masculine sign, so it has that yang quality, all air and fire signs are masculine in their energy. So then let's look at Libra 3, this particular decan. We can add another layer of meaning onto this part of the zodiac by looking at the decanic rulers. Under the triplicity system, it's Mercury, the god of communication, and under the Chaldean order, it's Jupiter, the god of expansion and optimism and abundance. One thing that's interesting is in the, for some reason I'm losing the name of this particular, the Thema Mundi. In the Thema Mundi, which is the chart of the world or world creation, an ancient chart, it's the root of our astrological chart today. Mercury and Jupiter always in astrology charts are in opposing signs, and this exemplifies the fact that they carry very different energies. Where Mercury is about the particular and details, as well as having a lot of other, energy around being cunning and witty. It's detail oriented. It wants to get the little facts in order or gather the facts and share them. And it's about the little and particular, like I said. Whereas Jupiter is a planet that's further out from the Earth. It has this expansive quality. And where Mercury wants to go for the particular, Jupiter wants to go for the whole. It wants to understand things in a larger context as part of the whole of reality. So one example I sometimes give to compare the two is the difference between Newtonian physics. That's like the physics you learn in ninth grade in high school, where we're measuring things and talking about force and cause and effect, right? It's all about measuring things in the real world. That's kind of the Mercury energy. Jupiter's more like Einsteinian physics, where Einstein came up with his theory of relativity, hoping to understand reality, how to balance time and space and understand how they relate to each other. So Jupiter's just got a very much more, in some ways, a spiritual quality. And Mercury, we could say, is more grounded in the human reality. So that might be one way to look at them. And then I say that in part because as we look at some of the esoteric language and ideas about this particular decan, I was really grappling with how to understand these in terms of the tarot card and the rulers of the sign, excuse me, the decanic rulers. And so I'm going to read these texts and then I'll talk about how I see these as a reflection of trying to find a balance between the human, the material world, and the spiritual, the one, the greater world, that Mercury versus Jupiterian energy. So the first is Ibn Ezra says or describes this decan as a man whose face resembles that of a horse with a bow and arrows in his hand. The Picatrix, a man upon a donkey, and before him a wolf. And this is the face of evil works, sodomites, adultery, of songs, joy, and of taste. Agrippa, a violent man holding a bow, and before him a naked man, and also another man holding bread in one hand and a cup of wine in the other. The signification of these is to show wicked lusts, singing, sports, and gluttony. So it's a lot of disparate ideas in there, which is really what fits with this decan in particular. But some of the symbolism we see, whenever we see symbolism of people that are like horses, it's even Sagittarius. The symbol for that is a centaur, half man, half horse. And part of the Sagittarian energy is about grappling what it is to be both human and divine. As human beings, we have our human embodied existence, but we also have this capacity to relate to the divine. And I see in all of these texts sort of talk about what is it to be a limited human being? What is it to want to expand and connect with the divine? We also see the Jupiterian energy here with the idea of songs, joy and joy, right? There's a certain expansive quality to Jupiter, the same with the idea of gluttony and singing in the last part of the text. So something about both the Mercury and Jupiterian energy. What is it to be human? What is it to balance the human particular part of who we are with a desire to be something bigger that may expand us and make us really big? And how do we find balance between those parts of who we are? How do we find our center and connect with it in the midst of all the desires that appear to us in the world, all those human activities, all those human expressions? Okay, how do we balance those two things in our life? And this is just me playing with the language and trying to grasp it, given the rulers and what I know also of the Four of Swords cards. So if y'all have other ideas after seeing some of this language, feel free to drop a comment, because this is all, astrology and interpretation and symbolism is all about trying to find the root understanding or grasp something that in some ways is ungraspable. And also my sense, knowing people with planets and points in this part of the zodiac, there's something about who they are where sometimes they can go to excess and other times they're limiting themselves and they're trying to find a balance between the two and trying to find their center, their spiritual center. We're going to see that with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's chart as well. So then let's move to the tarot card. It's interesting. First on the right here, this is the tarot card, the Three of Swords, where you see the heart with three swords penetrating it. That represents the second decan of Libra. And now we've moved to the third decan. So we're moving from a place where we had this energy, Saturn, that was restricting us and containing us and around love relationships, having us commit and understanding the meaning of commitment. And now we've moved to the Four of Swords. And hold that idea of the Three of Swords in the back of your mind for when we talk about the Kabbalah next, because it's really interesting. So the Four of Swords, we see a figure lying on a tomb. When you get this card, when you pull it, if you're doing a tarot spread for yourself, oftentimes, depending on the cards that are nearby, it might be an indication that it's time to take a breath and rest. You've been maybe going too hard, you know? And this card can also represent sort of this meditation, reflection, and spiritual healing. We see that this figure is in a church. You see the stained glass window in the background. It's all that also represents this moment of stillness, but you can imagine the swirling energy underneath. If you've ever meditated, oftentimes we meditate or pray in moments of distress where we're trying to find that center. So again, we see that theme of finding one's center there. Yeah, and it's also can reflect sort of a pause to gather strength before future challenges. We can also look at the swords, the Four of Swords in the Thoth deck, which is that second card that you see with the four swords kind of touching each other, with the green background, and it's called Truce. So there's something again about there's been some chaos, some fighting, some conflict, right? Mercury, Jupiter coming into conflict with each other, and you're looking for a moment of respite, trying to find harmony. And it represents this temporary moment of peace or stillness in the midst of the flowing energy of life. And so then we can look at the Kabbalah. We can always look at the Tree of Life in Kabbalah because the numbers 1 through 10 here, the Sephirah, are related to the tarot cards that we look at. Yeah, we look at from 2 to 10, and when we look at the tarot cards that are associated with the 36 decans of the Zodiac. And here we're at Hesed, number 4, because it's the Four of Swords. So we've moved from Bina, which is understanding, to Hesed, which is mercy. And there's a way in which with the Tree of Life, what's happening is spirit is descending into matter and manifesting itself. And this is how it travels, this capacity to manifest the divine in our own personal life is what the Tree of Life represents. And so if we think about this symbolically, the move from Bina, understanding, to Hesed, mercy, we can say it's about finding our center, about taking the lessons of structure and limitation that are Bina. Bina is on the feminine side of the tree and sort of this container, and creates restriction. Remember that Three of Swords card in tarot is Saturn ruled. Saturn's about restrictions, responsibility, hard work, commitment. And so we're moving from this space of being contained into sort of opening up to the mercy of the world, right? So Bina is called understanding, and it represents form, boundaries, and discipline, where ideas are shaped and refined. Hesed, which is called mercy, is the expansive flow of compassion, grace, and generosity that softens Bina's edges, offering balance. It's like resting after a long journey. Again, that idea of rest with the Four of Swords. Bina's challenges teach limits and responsibility, while Hesed allows for healing and renewal, building a foundation for future expansion. Then we can connect that to the third decan of Libra, ruled by Jupiter and Mercury, which reflects this balance. Jupiter brings spaciousness and generosity, while Mercury can help offer mental clarity, that internal reflection where we're finding our center in the midst of disparate ideas, helping us to process and integrate the lessons from the last decan. Together, they symbolize a pause for restoration, insight, and harmony. And so we can just take all those ideas and apply them to and think about somebody who had his rising degree in this part of the zodiac. We have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I think it's fascinating. I'm going to read the quote I found for him that really reflects this Libra decan. He said, you have to be able to center yourself. And he literally was a center for the basketball team. So I think that's fascinating as well. To let all of your emotions go. Don't ever forget that you play with your soul as well as your body. So this also represents what I was talking about before, that there's something about this part of the zodiac that's about reconciling or trying to balance the human with the divine. That's the ideas that come in part from those ancient texts. So Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is one of the NBA's greatest players. He's 7 feet 2 tall, and he played center on the team. And he had the all-time scoring record for nearly 40 years because of this sky hook shot that you see there. And you can just look at that image of him and imagine the type of balance and seriousness and being centered he needed to be able to reach that high and to make those shots, right, in a way where other people could not touch him. His success was rooted in a unique combination of his height, his agility, and his balance. Beyond basketball, he's respected as an intellectual and cultural figure. He pursued an education at UCLA, developed a passion for history and culture. He wrote several books, including books on the Harlem Renaissance, and became an advocate for civil rights and social justice. That's the Venus as uh, goddess of war, goddess of justice there, right? In 1971, he converted to Islam, adopting the name Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to reflect his spiritual journey and values. So his life reflects this balance between athlete and thinker, competitor and activist, public figure and reflective individual. So he's taking all these disparate forces and putting them together. One thing I also like to point out when I look at charts is the very obvious way that astrology works. You can see in his chart who he is without a lot of knowledge or understanding of astrology. First of all, you see on the right there on his chart, there are 3 stars. There's an orange star by the sun. That's because his sun, which is his vision, is in Aries. In astrology, the sun is exalted in Aries. He had a really strong sun. His Mars is circled in red along with Mercury next to it. There's a red star because his Mars is in Aries. Mars rules Aries. It has extra power. And then we see next in pink, Venus in Pisces with a star because Venus is exalted in Pisces. Venus rules his chart. You see on the left, pink Libra is colored. He's a Libra rising, as we talked about with his Libra in the 3rd decan. This is extraordinary. I do lots and lots and lots of charts. It's very rare for people to have so many planets in exaltation and in their rulership. And although it is typical for people that are famous or who achieve great heights in their life. So that I thought was really fascinating. Also, I just have to point out his Mars is not only in Aries, but it's angular, meaning it's in the 7th house. The 1st house, the 4th house, the 7th, and the 10th are angular houses, and their power is extra strong. Oftentimes, athletes have their Mars in an angular house. It's just something that astrologers talk about. So this just feels like a really great chart to explain a little bit of astrology. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed the talk. I certainly enjoyed sharing it and exploring these ideas more deeply for myself. Feel free to drop a comment if you have points or placements in this part of the zodiac and want to share, whether it resonated with you. And if it did resonate with you, if you feel like sharing a little bit about how and why, that'd be great. So have a great day, and I'll see you in about 10 days for Scorpio 1.